Hello friends. Today I'd like to talk about a challenge. In the game of Alchemy Factory, there's a challenge where you need to build an entire factory in only the starting plot. This is often called the one plot challenge. As you can see, none of the other plots other than the one you start with the game has been purchased. It's very popular to couple the one plot challenge with the no sales challenge. And as you can see here, this save, which was completed in mid-January, is closed, and there's nowhere for a customer to buy any products. In fact, if I bring up the stats page and sort by sales, we can see overall there has never been a sale. The top items show a sale of 0, and the bottom items show a sale of 0. I was fairly new to Alchemy Factory when I attempted and completed this challenge. I thought it'd be fun to revisit the save and point out things that were learning moments, places where I feel like I did well, and places where I feel like I could have improved the design. I'm going to walk through these components from the bottom of the factory all the way to the top and offer my commentary. I hope you enjoy. Let's talk about skill points and where I spent them. I'm going to open up the skill tree, and we'll first talk about the must-have skill. That is the customer management skill. You're going to get an increasing amount of quest rewards, starting at 6%, moving all the way to, I think, 20%, yes, towards the end. And every 4 skills, you're going to get an additional quest. So 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 1 daily random quest, making it 2 total. 1, 2, 3, 4, we get another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, we get an additional one. That means every day you're going to get the base 1 quest plus 3 additional quests, meaning you have 4 chances to get things like urgent requests, which give double the normal amounts of money, or bulk requests, which give 160% more money. On top of that, you're getting a bonus to how much money you received. As you can see here in the world details of your player tab, I'm getting 4 daily random quests, and every one of my quest rewards, no matter which one it is multiplied out by 280%, meaning I get a ton of money from quests. You shouldn't have money problems. You put a lot of points into your quest rewards. As for the other points, I think it's somewhat optional. I put some points into your logistics efficiency because I was moving so many products around. I would probably keep the logistics efficiency equal to your factory efficiency. But again, I was a little bit newer to the game, and so I put more in belts just for moving things around. I did like having a lot of points in the fuel efficiency and fertilizer efficiency. If you are looking to get a cheeky bonus to your XP, save up your relics from the early start of the game, such as you can see here I have a box and actually multiple boxes filled with Saturns, and then take advantage of the fact that resetting your skills is fairly cheap. You can see when I go to reset mine, it's at 16 silver because I reset my skills a couple of times. Each time I did, I would put all my points in relic knowledge, every single point that I could. During that time, I would take out all of my saved relics and I would put them into the machine that gives you experience, called the knowledge altar. You take your knowledge altar, you feed all of your stored relics into it to give you a large bump in XP, then you go and reset your skills, put them back to what they normally are, and repeat the process. Let's start by zooming out and looking at the overall structure of my one plot factory. It's very open. I didn't use more than half width walls because I didn't want to use the steel required for the vertical beams. And so there's little half width walls towards the front or entrance of the base, as well as towards the back corners. And that provides you structure all the way to any height that you want. Additionally, I put my stairs in the kind of back of the one plot tile towards the building that is facing towards the castle, and the stairs are repeated on every floor in the exact same place. This way I have all the rest of the floor to use for factory machines, logistics, and walking space. Each floor contains a sign in the back left corner. This displays the number of the floor that I'm on, along with all of the products and components that are available for grabbing on that floor. Given that you can't sell to customers, your only 2 methods for income are dispatch portals and quests through the mailbox. As you can see here, towards the very end of the run, you're going to be asked for extremely challenging items to create and supply for the mailbox because those items have been researched and are available for the quest to request from you. One thing that I did do well on this run, I believe, was place boxes containing common components near the mailbox, including a box right here that could be used to drop off money that would automatically be converted into the currency of my choice and distributed throughout the factory above. My 0 floor was really sort of a hodgepodge of metal components such as steel, iron, nails, copper, bronze, etc. And it's also where I made the final soul relic. I didn't use automation to create the soul relic. I sort of hand-fed a lot of the machines and used some cauldrons to make the final items, but not nearly as much as you've seen me in previous videos because I was pretty new to cauldrons at the time. As an example, I used relics to create stardust instead of using a cauldron recipe because that's just what I knew at the time. My first floor contains things like basic fertilizer, which is only being used to create advanced fertilizer, my lime water extractors, prior to me understanding the power of thermal extractors high up on the 16th and 17th floor, and some other components like large wooden gears, small wooden gears, and a machine in the back. Create coke powder to power various machines here on this floor. Here we can see where money is collected from down below, changed into silver, stored in this box when we have excess, and then ultimately sent out in 3 silver coins to ascend the factory and be distributed as money on every floor above. Additionally, because space is so tight, the advanced fertilizer being made on this floor is being belted up a lift and sent to various floors that need it. This isn't the only way that everyone gets fertilizer. I do have other places that make fertilizer, such as growth potions and fertile catalyst, but this is the closest floor to the bottom, therefore it's kind of the oldest components that I made. You can also see the early version of my logistics pipes that route liquid all the way throughout the entire factory. I don't have every liquid in a pipe, but most of them are, and it allows me to quickly draw liquids off of any floor and use them as vertical piping on that floor. Again, because of the small space, I did find it handy to make these small, sort of micro coke powder machines, with one grinder being sent to multiple crucibles and some advanced grinders here. It feeds itself as the coke powder comes out and then goes down the line so that others on the same floor or different floors can consume the coke powder. You'll see me spread these throughout the build all over the place as needed because it doesn't provide a ton of power, but it is pretty powerful and it's small, which is very handy. A lot of tier 4 components are made on the second floor, which makes sense because I built it after completing tier 3. We have glass, clay, and brick, as well as components that are required for the quest, such as vitality potions, transformation potions, soap, yeast powder, and gloom spores. You see me start to kind of run out of space here, as the belts are pretty much a trip hazard around my stairs, and I'm trying to cram in the dispatch portal for my gloom spores whenever I have too many of them. And yes, you'll be sad to see that I threw away my planks from the rotten logs even back then. I guess I've never really learned my lesson. I tried to make it so that it was easy to grab components that I needed to fulfill quests, such as coming up and seeing that there's a red box. In my world, a red box means it contains products that I can grab to fulfill a quest, and that it's okay to take from it. You can see the same thing for clay and bricks. On the back side, you can see my logistics configuration, where I'm using kind of my standard config, money on the bottom, fuel in the middle, and fertilizer on the top. I like being able to use a belt along the edge of the building because it's sort of wasted space on the lower floors, but we can do better with it on higher floors. I attach the purchasing portals where necessary, and then route the components and resources such as the fuel and fertilizer to the machines that need them. Here we can see the money belt and the fertilizer belt coming from below, and then we're distributing both components where it needs to go. In the case of money, the belt T-junctions and goes to the right to feed machines, as well as to the left to feed machines. However, fertilizer is only required on the machines to the left, so it only goes in that direction to save resources. On the other side of this floor, I want to point out a place where I could have done better. Here we can see the fertilizer both going to machines on this floor and going down another T-junction to rise to the floor above. This is a bit complex and messy, and I kind of figured it out after the fact. In my more modern designs, I have everything go up on one side and everything else go down on the other side. So if I had to do this again, I would make all the lifts over the direction I'm pointing go up, and all the lifts over here go down, so that it's more consistent and I'm not having to trace more complex and spaghetti feeling like lifts. On the third floor, it's really just a lot of things that require flax, such as linen, linen rope, the healing potions, which additionally requires sage, turquoise, which is sand and healing potions, bandages, and on this side we have the Jupiter. The builds are pretty tight and compact, or at least the best I could do at the time, and I continue to use the red boxes to indicate where I can grab things like healing potions or bandages to fulfill the quests. Because I knew that I would need to make stardust, but I didn't quite understand that I could use cauldrons to do it, I maintain a stockpile filled with all the different relics required to make stardust. As you can see here, I have nearly 4 full boxes filled with Jupiters because I decided to keep using them in storage, and once I filled all the boxes, I would go ahead and use them for experience. In places where I needed to route goods from one side to the other, I would use either cannons or add additional layers to my money, fertilizer, and fuel belt to supply things like, in this case, the rope being sent over to create pulleys for the Jupiters. One thing I'll point out that I did like was using something like this row of blocks as a template blueprint, so that every time I laid down a floor, I would place my template blueprint, which would contain the belts, this row of blocks as a sort of guideline, and the lab stands with other belts on top of it, so that every floor started identical. I didn't mind making alterations to it because obviously space is at a premium and sometimes you have to break the rules a little bit, but having a template so that your floors feel identical is a nice way to stamp out, so to speak, a new floor as you build up. As you reach the 4th floor, you can start to expand beyond your plot. That's because vertically you're above the plots next to you, so you're no longer in danger of being out of the build zone. The nice thing about this is when you use quarter width floor tiles, you can extend pretty far out from the base plot that you're in. As you can see here on this floor, I used an extra 2 tiles to fit my lavender oil. This is where I wish I knew more about cauldrons at the time, although I didn't have cauldrons when I first built out my growth potions. I feel like building clay without a cauldron is so clunky and large, but I managed to kind of condense it all down to this one side of the building and put 4 small machines linked together to create clay powder and then send that for growth potion. This floor and all floors above it use the growth potion for anything that requires fertilization. This floor also contains my Saturn factory, where I'm making all the components locally, such as the brick, the salt, and the glass, and all leftover sand is being refined down into diamonds, along with grabbing salt for brine. If I were to do this over again, I would just go all the way up to the top of the roof and build my brine up there anyway, and plan to have thermal extractors, so it would be really easy to swap out the regular extractors, as shown here, with thermal extractors. But live and learn. You can see how nice it is behind the machines to have these few extra tiles. It gives me some breathing room to work beyond the money, fuel, and fertilizer belt, and I can even put little thin machines out here if I want, or route additional lifts to grab things that are above and beyond what I would normally grab over my main lifts. This is also when I start to get access to bronze rivets, which are necessary for the stackable crucibles and the enhanced grinders. So rather than seeing those small coke powder machines, you start to see these triple stacked coke powder machines, providing a full belt of coke powder for localized power. And again, I kind of stick them on the lip of the building towards the front, because it makes a nice little slice of space. It fits in here nicely, and it's able to directly output onto the power belt, and it feeds itself. As we reach the 5th floor, we start to see slightly more exotic materials such as black powder, bronze bar and rivets, iron sand, unstable catalysts, etc. It's also where we can really stretch our legs and start to build in every direction with a lot of space. As you see here, rather than just going 2 tiles out, I'm going a full 4 tiles out from the edge to build different machines that I might need, including random shapers. I started this floor by trying to build out regular type versions of the copper and bronze powder, or rather copper and impure copper powder, and blast potions, which require black powder. You can see here that I'm kind of learning as I go how to fit all these machines together, because they require many belts that are full of materials like iron sand or coke powder. I'm also using a lot of local creation of things like linseed oil, which is a no-no. I really should have moved this up to the thermal extraction floor and not tried to cram it here, but at the time, I tended to build liquids with the buildings that needed them as a rule, rather than putting all of the liquids up on the top roof floors where I get the thermal extraction bonus. And so this build gets kind of ugly and convoluted, and I wouldn't build it this way again. For most of the advanced shapers, I didn't really want to sell them on the quests, and so if a quest requested something like a Mercury, I would just ignore it. I did make a Mercury, obviously for my soul, and the same with the Venus and the Luna, but I only made one of them because that's all you really need in order to complete the run. And that's why you have these color-coded boxes here for the topaz, the malachite, obsidian, the lapis lazuli, and the turquoise. I just stuck them in the box, hooked up the quicksilver to the shaper, and built one Mercury, and then used that only for the creation of my soul. I didn't automate this or try to use it for quests or profit. The final production floor before we hit the thermal extractors on the roof is floor 6. And this is where we make the final endgame components required to build everything necessary for the soul, such as aqua vitae, the fertile catalyst, panacea potion, resonant catalyst, and a world tree, really just for supplies to make things like the aqua vitae. This is where I started to get creative and explore the power of cauldrons. You see a lot of cauldrons here, such as for resonant catalyst, I'm using bags of seeds, create fertile catalyst, and then sending that in along with another cauldron nearby, building obsidian that I'm crushing into ash and mixing with aqua vitae for the resonant catalyst necessary to build the soul. The same kind of thing exists here for the panacea potion. We're building fertile catalyst using seeds, and then supplying the other components, such as the blast potions and the aqua vitae, here locally to build panacea potions. I used a very different formula for obsidian than I do in my other videos. In this case, it was a copper ingot, a silver ingot, and coke powder, because those were things I had on hand and they seemed pretty easy. I also wasn't looking to mass produce obsidian. I'm not looking to make a bunch of Mercuries, for example. I'm just taking enough as a grab box to fulfill quests and enough to crush to send to make things like the resonant catalyst. I also want to tip my hat to my very first world tree, which I titled the Big Old Tree. I really made the panacea potion to fulfill the fertilizer requirements of the tree and these other materials and plants up here that required a lot of fertilizer. So that's why I was making the panacea potion and some extra fertile catalyst. And here we can see my arcane processor taking the chamomile powder, gentian powder, and world tree leaves to make all the fairy dust that I needed for the fairy tears. Floors 7 and above up until the roof are empty, and I just want to show you that they follow the same template. Each one has the little vials that are necessary to see the liquids, just so I can keep an eye on them, and the lifts bringing up fertilizer and money all the way to the roof. You also get pretty good at going upstairs without looking, after going up and down this stinking building a million times. These liquids might look familiar. These are the very early designs of how I got linseed and fruit wine when I started playing the game. Kind of identical to what you saw earlier, where I have a single line of things like flax and red currant coming down the line, but obviously could be much improved in terms of efficiency. We are at a height of 257 and therefore are getting triple the production with the full 200% additional multiplier. Welcome to my illustrious moon tier production. I'm kidding, but it is where I made my moon tiers. I simply brought the fairy dust into this box and extracted it into fairy tiers here locally. This was the only thing using it, so it has some fairy tiers left in it. I was making my stardust on the ground floor, as you saw earlier, by grinding up my Jupiters, Saturns, and Mars. And then voila, we have fairy tiers. Those are being pumped directly into a shaper where I made my single Luna necessary for the soul. Here's another angle where you can see the top of the building. Gives you a clearer view of me using the walls, which I stretched up the entire factory first. Then I added the floors floor by floor. And we get to say hello to one final coke powder machine, which is supplying power to all the furnaces for the thermal extractors. If you're on the fence about trying this challenge, I highly recommend it. It's fun, it's a good challenge, and honestly, a lot of the things that you see in my more modern designs for factory automation came from this challenge, because it really forces you to organize machines and logistics in a small space. Thank you for joining me today. I am curious, in the comments below, are you going to be working on the one plot, no customer challenge? Or have you completed it? Any of your thoughts or tips would be welcome, because this is definitely not a best-in-class build, but a raw look at how I completed the challenge, warts and all. I hope you have a wonderful day, and take care.